Hi, everybody. Welcome to La Lista, a LatinX writers podcast. I am your host, Ruben Mendive, and today I have a whole new writer for you. I like to start my podcast off by having the guests introduce themselves.
Cool. My name is Lindsey Villarreal, and I am a Latinx. I think I go by Latinx. I think I do. I feel like I've wrestled between that lately. Do I want to call myself Latina, Latinx? Yeah. I think Latinx because I feel like it's more inclusive for all my people.
Yeah.
You know. And I am a Tejana. I'm from Texas, from San Antonio, and I've been in LA now for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
So
a veteran.
I know. I'm an Angelino now. I think I was like, no, I'm Tejana. And I still feel, I think I identify as Tejana for sure. Mm. But it definitely never want to go back to Texas. Yeah. LA is my home now.
So I do like to start every conversation with, and I know this is a loaded question for Latinx people, but where are you from? Where's your family from?
I feel like that's a pretty easy question for me. My dad is from Chihuahua, right? So Perfect. He immigrated from Mexico when he was 3 or 4, so he was little.
Yeah.
But my Thea and my Theo came over, and then my grandmother left, she escaped a bad marriage in Mexico. It's the kind of thing we never really know what happened to her. Okay. I'm sure there's a shitload of trauma for her to grab her kids and leave somebody and come to the States. Mm-hmm. But at that time it was easier because she had dual citizenship because her dad, I guess my great grandfather, lived in Lockhart in Texas.
Okay, cool.
Right, so they grew up there. My dad grew up there, and then my mom's side of the family is puro Tejanos. They have been in Texas since before it was Texas. You know what I mean? So I just did one of those ancestry things, and I'm my family has not moved an inch since the 1700s. They just norteños, up to San Antonio, back down, up to San Antonio, back down, just in and around that same area. So we've been in the same area forever. Yeah. So very Tejana. And they're still there. Everybody's still there. My sister lives here now.
Okay. But, yeah, I find that's interesting about people from Texas who were OG deep roots in Texas. Mm-hmm. That it's almost has its own qualification too.
Totally.
Yeah, because there's no real immigration story. It's
we got co-opted.
Yeah.
I always think of it that way because my family didn't go anywhere. They just were there. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden they were boop, we're Americans. And that was just how it was for them. I mean, at least for my great-grandparents.
Yeah.
Great-great-grandparents. Yeah. I mean, and people, Jesus, love Texas. So they're never moving. They're there forever. It's very state pride place, you know? For me, when I was growing up, I was I got to get the fuck out of this state. It was just so Texas felt oppressive to me. But as I got older, it was everywhere can feel oppressive, right? You just have to kind of build your base wherever you are.
Yeah.
So.
And yeah, so can you talk about sort of what it was like for you growing up in Texas?
You know what's so funny about San Antonio? I mean, I grew up in San Antonio, mm-hmm. and I went to undergrad in Austin. And I feel I actually do listen to this podcast called Code Switch.
I've heard a couple episodes. Yeah. I just actually had to explain to somebody what code switch was.
Well, the concept of code switching?
Yeah.
That's interesting. But this podcast is really cool. This podcast just did an episode at UTSA, which is University of Texas, San Antonio. Mm-hmm. And they had a class where it was a class on code switching. Mm-hmm. And they used the podcast as kind of a centerpiece for the class.
Yeah.
And the kids had to make their own podcast about identity and code switching and stuff. And while they were doing that, this incident happened at UTSA at the school where basically this girl came into class, this black girl, and she had, how you go into an auditorium and the seats are too close, right? So she had her feet hanging over the front row, mm-hmm. right? And the professor got mad and told her to take her feet down, mm-hmm. right? And that was a Friday. And then Monday he called campus security and had her escorted from class because he decided over the weekend that like he felt threatened by her. Right. So this is this Black student, and she felt like the Latino students in the class were going to come to her aid, like the people of color. And they were all not coming to her. They're like, no, that's the teacher. Like, you should listen to the teacher. Right. Because like San Antonio is a very, very conservative city. So is like, as is Texas. Right. But it's funny because then the podcast became about how like the Black students as Black residents of San Antonio felt like the minority because San Antonio is majority Latinx, and that's such a weird way to grow up. Like literally when I was in San Antonio, the lightest skin possible, blue hair, blonde eyes, everybody was Latinx to me. I'm like, you're Latinx. It's like I was growing up in a place where like I didn't even have to question. There was like so few white people that I felt comfortable all the time. So then when I went to, then when I was like, I gotta get the fuck out of San Antonio, and I went to UT Austin for undergrad, that was like the first time, now that I look back on it, like that was the first time I had to be like find my way to fit into like a white space. Right. And I had like this is perfect example. I thought my name was so original. I was like, Lindsey is so original. Nobody's named Lindsey. And then I go to like UT Austin. I'm like, every white bitch at this school is named Lindsey. But I was like, I was very depressed my freshman year. I didn't know like who to talk to, how to fit in. I wanted to drop out. I wasn't doing well in school. Like I went from being like the top of my class at this very low income school in San Antonio to being like, I did not know how to study. I like sailed through high school, like top of my class. And then I got to college and I was like getting C's, So I was like, I don't know how to do this. I'm dumb. I'm stupid. I should drop out. And I like would just hang out in my dorm by myself. And like, I was, when I look back on it, I was trying to figure out how to navigate a space in which I wasn't dominant, And that was depressing. I felt like I had to be more mainstream in order to like fit in, I like worked at the radio station. I listened to like punk music. I was like trying to do everything to fit into those circles. And I think it took me a long time to figure out that I could assert my own identity and not have to fit into those spaces. Maybe even until grad school, man. Like I went back to grad school when I was like 24. And that was the moment where I was like, I went to USC for grad school to the film school. And that was a moment where I was like, okay, nobody here is making the films I want to make. Everybody is making these big repeats of, Star Wars, Spielberg movies. And like, I don't give one fuck about movies like that. But I was like, I want to make smaller films that are about my identity. So I made this little documentary about a family that lives in Boyle Heights, the Mota family. Now they're the Mota Family mariachi, but they were kind of realizing that during my documentary. The husband, Richard Mota, he teaches at Salesian High School in Boyle Heights. And he has this really cool program where it's not just kids from the school who can take the program. It's like local community members from like little kids who are like playing these big guitarrons to like older people who never had the chance to learn, who are always interested. So it's a very cool like mix of people in that area, and my doc became about that. And then so I made that very early on in grad school, and then I became like, oh, Lindsey's the like Latinx like filmmaker, right? Like she's making everything. So then I just kind of like, at first I was like, am I that? Like, do I only want to make that? And then I was like, maybe I do. Like maybe I want everything I do to have a Latinx identity. And that takes a long time to be like, to think that that's okay for your identity as an artist to like take over. Because I've even been asked that recently. Like now I'm like a writer in the Writers Guild, and I've been on shows where people are like, is that all you want to write? And I'm like, is that so bad? I don't think it is. I think it's something unique to, not to me, to my community, but that I can have a spin on myself, right? Like I have a couple different scripts and they all have Latino leads, and
no one asked the white straight suburbanite guy why he's writing only like stories about white guys in the suburbs. Like no one asked that question. That's just like, oh, that's just a dominant culture that's mainstream. And it's like, okay,
right?
But no one asked that. Like those guys who are trying to like be Spielberg, like they're trying to remake E.T. or the Goonies. Like nobody asks them like, oh, is that the only things you do? Like,
yeah, I'm over here like, maybe I want to remake tortilla soup.
Yeah. Tortilla soup is tortilla soup is already like a remake of its own movie.
Oh, is it? What's a remake of?
It's like an Asian film.
Oh,
yeah.
What's the film? Do you know?
It's I don't remember the name, but it's basically the same story.
To me, it was like the Tamalera story. Like Las Tamaleras. Have you seen that play?
No.
It's like the play where it's like around Christmas where it's like sisters and one gets their ring lost in the masa.
Oh yeah. I feel like I don't know. Have you read the children's book Too Many Tamales? That's what it reminds me of.
But I bet it's like based off of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's like my earliest memory of like a Latinx story, because my mom took me to see it when I was, I don't know, maybe I was like in middle school or something. And there's this place in San Antonio called the Blue Star Arts Complex. It's really cool. If you ever get a chance to go to San Antonio, you should go check it out. It's always closed for some reason. Like literally every time I go, I'm like, man, y'all fools never open up these galleries. But when it is open, it's very cool. And I spent like a lot of my time in high school there. But there's a theater there. I think it's called Brick at the Blue Star. But they put on the tamalera Las Tamaleras when I was in middle school. My mom took me there, and it was just we used to like going to plays during Christmas time when we had time off from school, and we went, and I don't think my mom thought it was going to have as much impact, because she thought it was just like a funny thing that like her friend had told her about, that shit was cheap tickets or whatever. And it stayed with me because I had never seen like people that look like me on stage, you know. And then around that time too, like I was in middle school too, or maybe like 5th grade. That was like when Selena had died, and it was just like I felt like these stories were like something I could do, and you know, or not when Selena died, when the movie came out.
Oh yeah. That was a big moment.
That was filmed like right by my house too.
Yeah,
so that was like why it felt like literally, you know, when they hear her song on the radio and they're at the Mr. W with the fireworks stand, that's like down the street from my house, from my mom's house. So it was crazy, where she gets turned away at the mall from the white lady. That's where that was like where I bought my prom dress.
And that's cool. Then you're just like, oh, I'm like Selena. Like I'm like this. I could be that big superstar. I could be this person that like other people look up to, that's got power and like their own agency. And I don't like you rewatch that movie and you're like, man, this movie got a lot of story problems. But you're like. That is blasphemous.
I'm sorry. Okay. Watch it again. You're just like, what? How did you get from there to there? But when you watch it, there's just a feeling of like, God, like, I don't know. How do I describe it? Just like, you're in awe because there's people on stage, people dancing, people saying things that are like your family, and shit, that's way more special than some like story arc. You know what I mean? It's just like it means so much more. You can't, and there's something you can't describe. I was with another guest. We were talking about, you know, the episode of Looking that. Oh, I love Looking. That was about Richie. Did you see Weekend, the movie? No, I didn't see The Weekend. So the guy who wrote. Who was the showrunner? Or maybe the guy who he had an indie movie called Weekend, which is all just like mumblecore people walking around. So that episode is like weekday, right? It's like one day. It like felt exactly like the movie to me, at least. Yeah, I loved Looking. But you know, it's like Richie going home, and you sort of get a slice of life. And I remember, you know, I'm in my 20s watching an HBO show and thinking, I've never seen representation like this. The things they were saying, I was like, they have some Mexicans on this show, like who no one else would know, like some of the stuff, like, and it's that feeling where you're just like, oh wow, is that what it's like to like see a part of yourself like reflected? What's funny is like I feel like that too, and I feel like when I have like moments like that, like it always comes back around, because like now Tanya is my boss, right? And she like wrote on that. So I was watching that probably the same time as you, and I was just like, God, it's so special to see something like this, that like they're fucking praying the ojo. It's like this is like my grandma praying the ojo away from me when I was a kid, you know what I mean? I don't know, stuff like that is really like, I feel like it's circular, and things that are like, for me, I just feel like things are meant to be and come back around. Yeah, and I had the same feeling when I was watching the first episode of VIDA, and there's the bottle of Valentina, and I was like, oh yeah, I have the jumbo one in my fridge right now. That's like so I have another, like if you go to my mom's house right now, she's got the big bottle too. Like but like I don't think I've ever seen a bottle of Valentina on TV. Like, well, I'm glad that it's doing that work. Yeah, for you. but it's like this little things, you know, because I think with so many shows and movies and stuff, like
like you can sort of like smell when it's not like the real thing. You can, when someone else is telling your story and it's reflective of other things they've seen or heard of, but not an actual lived experience.
I feel like that too. And I feel like I have that conversation with like maybe white writers who are like, but like, am I allowed to tell those stories? And I'm like, you're allowed to tell like whatever story you want to tell, but the question is not, are you allowed to do it? It's just like, is it going to reflect like an authenticity? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like maybe like, is a story about like, you know, would a story like Handmaid's Tale be better told by women than like a male showrunner? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like something like not that that's not a good show, because it is what it is. Like it's a very good show. But we were like Handmaid's Tale, don't get me wrong. But it's like I
feel like this is also blasphemous. But I agree with you. I watched the first couple episodes and I was like, oh, man wrote this. Like,
yeah, you can feel it. You know what I mean? Man, I'm just like blasphemy all over the place right here. I'm just like, but
I could cut all this out too.
No, it's not that. It's like, and I'm not like talking shit on any of this stuff because it's all special, and it's like you don't make stuff for it to like exist in a box.
Mm-hmm.
You make stuff for it to be interpreted by people and liked and debated and talked about. And like, if your thing is just like made to please you and you only want people to like say that it's great, like it's not a work of art that is ready to be dissected or interpreted or talked about, you know?
Yeah. And this question, I was watching like a Hollywood Reporter Roundtable, and like Lee Daniels was talking about like, in another one it came up in the sense of like, okay, well, if I don't want it to live in a world where only white writers write white roles and like people of color only write. And I remember thinking like, but who's saying that? No one is saying that. People are just saying like, give the opportunity for people of color to write their own stories. Yeah. Make the space for it. And Lee Daniels, he was talking about it. He's like, yeah, it's not as genuine. But he was saying like, I could write, you know, the mainstream culture because I've been ingesting it for my whole life. Like I could like me personally, I could probably give my best shot at it. Like 4 kids who live in the suburbs who ride their bikes around, and then some like weird thing happens that like ET-esque or Stranger Things-esque that like, because it's the same stuff that like, but it doesn't, but you know, white writers don't have the same insight into arts because they haven't been seeing it in the media for the last 50 years. Right. So I think it's just, and also it's that thing of like, just because other writers are getting something, that doesn't mean anything's being taken away from you. Yeah. Which I feel like that's how it feels like sometimes, even though the numbers don't support that also.
Right. I was working on developing this. It's like have you ever seen the movie Attack the Block?
No, I don't think so.
It's like a sci-fi movie. It's like John Boyega's like first movie that came out like maybe like 2011, a long time ago now. Mm-hmm. But I was trying to develop like a remake of it, and it was like a remake in East LA, right? Mm-hmm. It's a very popular sci-fi film. It's like these black and white kids like in the south end of London and like the blocks, right? And they're being like attacked by aliens. Just like a very simple alien story. There's no like government or like predisposed thing happening where you have to explain who the aliens are. It's literally just like kids find an alien and they're like, let's kill it, and then the rest of the aliens come down for him. So it's like a run and gun type of thing. So we redeveloped it for it to happen in Borough Heights, and people kept asking, they were like, what's the difference? What is this about? I'm like, it's the same. It's literally just like different by experience, by like the dialect, by what these kids go through, by like, you know. And it was like interesting to explain that because they were like, this has to be about identity. And you're like, no, it's a remake of the movie. Yeah. It's just, the identity is present in the way they experience what is happening around them. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I've had comments on my scripts like that, like, oh, like, why would you make this thing that's about a Latinx family or a Latino family, from the notes, like a Latino family that doesn't do anything Latino. And I'm like, but are you reading the script where they're like, you know, they're lighting velas, like their identity is present through what their action, not that they have to like put on a sombrero and talk about their rights. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, it's funny to see how Hollywood interprets what an identity story
because they're also going by the past representations, but have we actually looked to see who made those representations? Like, I feel like the Latinx experience is still very much like the 80s, like East LA aesthetic. Right. That I don't even know if it's still in East LA, but somehow it's still being made continually in media. Yeah. And you know, this also, you know, we talk about this podcast about gatekeepers, and and you can write your story that reflects your experience, but if it's not acceptable or seen as authentic by the people greenlighting it and approving it,
totally,
then that is also framing the media we output. Because it's like there's this other writer, Ricardo Gamboa. He sort of a little bit talks about this, about how like us as Latinx people trying to exist in a system that was never made for us, and that how it really, he's like radical, and like I love this train of thought that he's like, we're trying to fit in and like tell our stories in a vehicle that's always going to try to like make it mainstream, make it acceptable, make it, because again, well, he's right. Who are the people who's signing the checks, who's representing the writers. Yeah.
I mean, and that's the problem is getting Latinx people, not just Latinx people, but people of color in those positions of power, right? Getting executives at networks, executives at studios, agents. Like if I could, I would have like a Latinx person in every, like in my rep positions and like, making the projects I develop with, because it's like, I just feel like it's easier to like collaborate in a way. Not that I don't want to collaborate with people of different races, and it's just like somehow the conversation's a little easier, maybe.
Yeah, well, there's no translating. It's more nuanced in just how you grow up, and like the similar shared cultural experiences. Right.
And maybe that's what is like threatening to like, dominant white culture in these like writers' rooms and stuff like that, is being edged out. Like I remember this is TMI, but I went on like a Tinder date with this guy and he was like, we were at the bar and he was also a writer, and he was like, like I'm being edged out of this business. My reps are saying there's no jobs for me because I'm like a white male, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, what are you writing about? And he was like, well, can I write about like issues for women or issues for Latinx people or issues for Black people? And I was like, you can. I was like, I don't know if they're going to be good. And he was like, well, then what is my story? And I was like, I don't know how to answer that question for you, because if like you're not interesting enough on your own, or you can't develop that story in your own in your own world, like, then why are you writing? Like, what do you want to say? Truly,
like so much of our how you said your identity, people are like, oh well, why are you making so much Latinx stuff? And it's like, because it's so part of the truth of who I am and my experience, and I'm just trying to reflect that and that's the lens I'm seeing through. We're all seeing the stories we tell are very reflective of who we are and who our experience or what our experiences are. Again, why I do this podcast, because there is no Latinx, show, idea, film. We are so varied, and like there's, every time I interview someone, I'm like, this is its own separate world that I never knew about, and that isn't on screen. So let's like we're also not a monolith. So yeah. So it's like, you're right. It's like, well, where are you pulling from? Because I have read scripts about people by, white writers who are like, you can tell they're intentionally trying to be a diverse story and characters because they think that's what's hot right now. And I'm like, and I'm reading it, I'm like, this feels like it's being translated by someone that's never read that language. Like,
I can't stand like the coloring up of side characters. I hate it. Like when there's a white character at the beginning, but they're cool because like everybody around them is a person of color. They got like a Black gay best friend, and they got a Latinx like boyfriend, and like everybody around them is a person of color except for the person who's telling the story. And I'm just like, I don't know if this is this gets a pass. I don't know. Not for me.
No, and I see stuff like that. Like I saw a trailer for a show, and lead white guy that he's got like two diverse best friends, and I was like,
cool.
I don't even know what to call that feeling, but it was just like, no.
Yeah, just like, I'm not watching this.
But I don't. But I think maybe because it feels produced, or it feels like a note, or it feels like I don't know, like it's not authentic, and I think maybe that's just a reaction.
But again, it's like, it's not like I'm like sitting around like saying like I'm not gonna watch anything with a white person in it, because like I'm clearly watching Big Little Lies. Like, yeah. But it's like I honestly, the first season got a little like boring for me, but I'm like, I'm back in for Meryl. But I'm watching stuff that is talking about something and has its own opinion and is voicing something. And I just think that for me, what I'm doing happens to inherently like always want a Latinx character, and when I write that stuff, it's gonna be a little bit more true. Like we have a Latinx character on The Purge, spoiler alert, coming up this season, and I just felt like those scenes came out of me very easy, and when it's very purgy. I don't know if you know any of the concept of the purge.
I'm familiar with the franchise.
Are you familiar with the purge?
Yeah.
But they're kind of like rough, emotional, gross family dynamic scenes, and I was like, these scenes are gonna come out of me easier if we root it in their identity.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it did, and hopefully we turn it in and people like it. But I just find it an easier task, when you can put something of yourself in what you're writing.
Yeah, and there's a complexity to that too, because if it's like Big Little Lies, like yes, all like mostly white cast. Shout out to Zoe Kravitz.
Yeah, shout out to Zoe Kravitz.
but I that didn't like register trigger me because it's a story I've never seen before.
Yeah.
Like Master of None, when he's having sex.
Oh,
I was like,
my God.
I've never seen an Indian man have sex on television.
That show triggered the fuck out of me because I had just gotten out a relationship with an Indian guy.
Oh.
And when in the first season when it doesn't work out with she's Latina.
Oh, I don't know.
That actress. She's from Texas. When it doesn't work out with her, I was like, and it was the parent, because you couldn't tell the parents. I was like, oh my God, this is my story.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, and I feel like that, and again, like, I feel like a very Latinx story can resonate for some non-Latinx person in a way that you don't know, right? Like, if I'm going to go and tell you that Aziz Ansari's like narrative of his relationship with a Latina girl is my story, you'd be like, what, why, how? And then you learn something specific about someone,
Yeah, and I was just watching. I just saw Rami.
Is that good? I haven't seen it yet.
So good, but it's like this like Muslim millennial in New York with his like immigrant family, and I was like, they do that too. Like this happens too, and even the religious aspects, you're like, oh yeah, the same thing happens like Catholicism, like and but again, it's just like,
I want to see it.
It's so good, such a different world, very Master of None, very Atlanta in the sense that it's like a very unique, very male. We need need more like where is the female, like
the female Rami?
Yeah, where's the female like Master of None? Where's the female like?
I don't know. The girls in VIDA are complex.
Yeah. Oh yeah, but
they're doing but I feel like VIDA is a very queer story, and it is rooted in family, but it's also like, the parents aren't there.
Yeah.
So it's like, but yeah, that's interesting. I don't know. What is the Latinx Rami? There's so few shows, man.
I mean, we have 5 shows.
Yeah.
I think, so
what are they right now? VIDA, One Day at a Time, which One Day at a Time's not on anymore, right? But maybe.
Queen of the South. Yeah. I haven't seen it, but I
haven't seen it
see it promoted. Is Narcos still on?
I've never seen Narcos.
I found very upsetting demographics in the writers' room, so I'm like, cool, but
got it.
But like, a reason why I started this podcast, I'm like, we can't even write for our own shows. Like,
well,
there's a problem here. Like, it's obviously a pipeline issue. Let me sort of help the pipeline.
Right.
Like,
you know what I want to see? I'm excited to see that the guy who, I don't know his name, the actor's name, is on Broad City. He's got that Alternatino.
Every time I see the title, it breaks my brain.
The ads for it are hilarious.
It's so weird, but
funny.
I love it. Yeah.
I feel like I saw him running one time in Griffith Park, and I like turned back around like really fast, but he saw me look at him and he kept running faster, and I was like, I'm not going to chase this dude down.
I had such a complex like relationship with that guy because I saw him on Broad City, and he's like, like an immigrant. He has an accent.
Yeah, it's very like caricature-y.
But I thought the actor was him, I
thought the actor was him too, but it's not, right? That's definitely not. He doesn't have an accent.
No, like I saw the behind the scenes of the last season, and when he just started talking like a regular dude quotations, I was like, oh, like I was like, oh, I thought one of us like was like doing it.
Yeah.
But like even like Will and Grace had like a Latino character with a very heavy accent, but very white presenting. And I was like, does this count? Like,
I can't stand the accent. I'm like, why make an actor do that?
And if it's for laughs, it's worse,
I think so too. I'm like, I understand that maybe it was some sort of device that you used in like network TV to like pinpoint like this person is not like the others.
Yeah.
But like, you don't have to do that anymore.
No.
We're such a like blended family of no, not at all. That's a very wrong statement. We're not a blended family of a country. But people are so at least our generation is so much more assimilated.
Yeah.
You know?
So I do want to talk more about you, though. I do want to talk about, where this like passion for writing came, when, like, how did you know that this is something you wanted to do?
I think about that question a lot because like I still have, so many people are like, I always knew I wanted to be a writer. I did not, man. I did not allow myself to be. I still have imposter syndrome. I'm like, I don't belong here. Somebody's going to find out. But I, when I look back into my life, I was always writing, but even throughout school, I was like in undergrad, I did film school twice because I was an idiot and I just like did not do well in undergrad or pay attention or think that like life was going to like, I should have paid attention more in undergrad. But in undergrad I did like film theory and stuff and post. So right when I graduated from UT in Austin, I had a job at a post-production facility and the post house went under, right? So then I was part-time and I wasn't going to get a job. And then I went back. This is a very weird tidbit about me, but I am a professional caricature artist.
Interesting. I mean, always need a side hustle, something to fall back on.
It's still my side hustle sometimes.
Great.
Less and less now. But I did that since I've been a caricature artist since I was 17. So I went back to doing that after undergrad, after the post thing went south. And I traveled around the country. And then that's what took me to San Diego, and I worked in all the theme parks there. I was a manager of the Wild Animal Park, now the San Diego Safari Park. But I did that, and then finally I was like, man, I'm going to be the manager of this place, and I'm going to keep getting older, and these kids are going to keep getting younger, and it's going to be weird. And I quit that job, and then I got into grad school at USC, and I moved up here. And even in USC, like not even I graduated in 2013. I was still doing, I was like focusing on producing. That was like my focus or my track because people were like, oh, you're such a good organizer. Like you should be a producer. And I was like, okay, I'll listen to you. So I did that, even though I was like writing here on the side or like writing and I was directing a little bit in school, but I wasn't telling myself I was that, But when I look back on like high school, it was like writing for the newspaper in the yearbook and writing poetry and in the academic decathlon stuff. Like writing was always a part. And I've always been a very avid reader. Like I've read since I was a kid and I still like read very voraciously. But even still sometimes today, like I think when I finally realized I was going to start writing, this is also a very interesting story. When I was living in San Diego, I was watching the second season of Mad Men, right?
Okay.
And so I was like, oh my God, I need to quit my job. I need to go back to school. And like TV was being good. It was like a peak TV, right? Yeah. And so then I quit and I got in, and my first job out of grad school was on Mad Men. So I was on the last 2 seasons, right?
And how, so people know, how did you get that job? Like,
my mentor in school, one of her, Mad Men is a very USC show, right? So a lot of the people who worked on it were from USC. She introduced me to one of the producers. She was like, oh, I think you'd really like her or get along. And she's got a spot available. And it was like an internship, and then intern turned PA turned into second assistant assistant turned into first assistant, and just went on for 2 years. And it was a great ride. It was like a really, really trial by fire like job. It was very hard, but it was the coolest job I've ever had.
It's like a whole nother grad school.
Oh, totally. I would say I learned more. I would say I learned more at Mad Men than I did at USC. Like just about like functionality. USC definitely prepared me for like working on set, but like just working on Mad Men was hard, and it was really fulfilling. But anyways, I was like, so I was working at that show, and I had a boss who, once the show was ending, he was like started developing some stuff. And he was writing a pilot, and I was helping him work on that. And he was like really instrumental. He was like, like in the past 2 years, I've never seen you like light up as much as when we're like writing this thing. And every time a script comes out, you really devour it. And he was like, you should write right now if you want to write. He was like, don't wait till you're like me and 55 and writing your first script. And I was like, that is really good advice. So I didn't think I wanted to, but then, right after that, I got a job with a showrunner, my very good friend, Rael Tucker. And I wrote a script, and then I wrote another one. And kept going, and she really like shepherded me. And then I like kind of rose from executive assistant for I worked for her, and then I worked for a showrunner named Carlton Cuse.
Yeah, familiar.
Yeah, familiar. Did Lost. But I was on Bates Motel and Strain and Colony with him, and a little bit at the beginning of Jack Ryan. But and I was working there. I got like a taste of like a million different writers' rooms, and they all worked so differently, and that was like another good boot camp. And I just kept working on my scripts. And then I went back and worked for that showrunner, Rael Tucker, and she gave me a writer's assistant and a script on the show, right? Then from there, that was another good boot camp, because then I directed a bunch of the ancillary stuff for Facebook. And then from there I went to VIDA, and I was a script coordinator, and I got staffed on The Purge after VIDA last season, and now I'm going back to VIDA in season 3.
Congrats.
Yeah, it took a long time. It was like a long road, because what's funny is that people are always like, oh my God, it just happened for you. I'm like, no, bitch, it took like 8 years. Like, I was an assistant forever, you know? And people don't see that. They're like, you know, I was assisting when I was in school still. Yeah. You know, I was like when I was like halfway done with school, I was like working and PAing and being an assistant. And it was like, it just took what it took. You know, like now, like since school started, since I moved here, like 10 years for me to get into the Writers Guild. I'm just a new member as of this weekend. Yeah. Which is, you know, that's something that like I try to like also convey on the podcast, where it's like, first of all, no one's like third job is like a TV writer, unless you're very, very lucky. And then also like nobody gets into like, because you know, like, what is it like, you know, being in a writer's room, your first day you are the writer, you know, because I think a lot of people have the perception that like, so the TV writers are like, they've handed in their masterpiece and people are like, yes, we must have you. Yeah. And everybody writing is at the top of their game, cranking out like professional perfection, and that you have to get to that level to even start. No, that's not true. I mean, I think you're just like, you're still constantly learning, and then every show is very different. I mean, and like even like refining like how you write in general like takes a long time, like just as a writer just on the page versus like for screenwriting is like a whole different thing, right? Like, what's your voice, and how do you put it down, and how much of it can you retain when it's somebody else's show? Like, there's so many different things to learn. I mean, and I think like allowing myself to be a writer, or like not believing that I could have a creative job, like started from childhood, right? Because it's like, that is not who my family is. They are like nurses and teachers and like you know, civil servants, right? And that's what's out, like stands out for them. They still do not understand what I do. They still don't care what I do. Like, not until like my name was on TV, they were like, oh, I get it. You do whatever you do, but your name is on TV, so I see it. But like, even still now, it's like, oh, you're the last cousin out of like 20 who's not married. Like, what are you doing with your life? I'm like, I don't know. It's like, have you seen the hashtags VIDA? Like it's a movement. Like, they don't get it. It's like, they get that it's something special, but it's like, like now you just need the husband and you're good. And I'm like, I don't know about that. You know, so it's like I allowing myself to like think that I could live in a space, or I had the privilege or the audacity to live in a space where I could be an artist. That is a long journey too, right? Because for a long time I was like, there, like in the middle of it, like my mom was like, you've been out there a long time, man, and you're still not making money. Like, think about coming back. And I was like, no, I'm not gonna come back. I swear to God, I'm not gonna come back. And so much of being out here is just like tenacity, like just like keep going. Hopefully one day it happens for you. Some people like go like forever. What was it, like Cary Fukunaga, right? Didn't get his break until he's like 38 or something like that. I always hear like for actors like John Hamm's like the example. Like, like it if you want it, you just have to like keep going after it. And that's hard, I think, for people. I mean, there's and again, like I grow up with different privileges. Like I grew up on the south side of San Antonio, and like single parent. We didn't always have money, but there's people at school who like the sheer difference in my success and their like whatever, like a life that is maybe not as successful just from feeling stuck or whatever. From what I hear from people is like, my parents love me. You know what I mean? Like some people have like horrible family situations that I went to school with in San Antonio, and you have to work out of like a family responsibility. And I was privileged enough to like have parents that were like, okay, like I trust you. Yeah. And that having people in your life who say I trust you is a privilege of its own, you know?
Yeah.
So
yeah, you know, I think about that all the time, just, you know, in my sense of like that I had the privilege to even move to LA.
Yeah,
like there's so many people that can't even move to LA.
You and I sitting here in your apartment is a privilege, right? Yeah. We're both privileged right now to be here. Yeah. And that to me is like a big responsibility. I think about it all the time. I started listening to this. Again, I love podcasts. I started listening to this podcast called Running from Cops. Have you heard of it?
No, you're giving me like such good recommendations. Running from Cops, okay.
It's about the show Cops and about how that show started in the 80s and it shaped our perception of the way that police are allowed to interact with us as the public. And it's so revelatory. It was just like talking about like, Cops is on all the time. It's in like waiting rooms. There's kids that are like reenacting the like bad boys. Like, and somebody has made this phenomenon that is like interjected in people's lives even when they don't want it. Do you know what I mean? And I think about media that way, and the like what I'm making, I'm like, you know what? I'm not just making something for myself that's going to exist in my like moody little notebook anymore. Like now I'm making something that's going to go on TV. It's going to have a life, and it's going to get screened to people whether they want it or not sometimes. And that is a responsibility. Like, and I feel responsible to put things on television that hopefully hold some merit. Yeah,
because, you know, I think that is a responsibility of like Latinx writers, creators. Yes. But I think it also has to click with the industry at large that there is a responsibility of the content that they output and how that informs people's perceptions of the world. Like, you know, VIDA is like, I think, such an amazing show because it makes that, you know, perception more complex.
Totally.
But you know, people are sitting watching CBS for 3 hours a day, and everything that this industry, this city is making is influencing what they think, how they see people, and it's just pouring into their living rooms every night. Yeah. And that there's such, you know, because you know, the reason I definitely like want to tell stories is because I want people to see the humanity in me, my identity, my family, how we grew up, how it has yet to be reflected. And the absence of that creates room for other things, for, you know, presidential rallies to fill that void. And if we're not doing that, if we are as writers aren't doing that, but also like we can only do so much if no one is like greenlighting and totally, then like the, you know, because there's statistics about like most white people only know other white people, but you know, everybody has a TV. Yeah. Everybody can go to the movie theater. Everyone can see billboards. Everyone can see a magazine. And that's why it's like our responsibility to like be real and show people as they really are instead of just like Cops, you know, like, it's the same thing. Like that is influencing how people though, how they interact with strangers. Yeah, how they think a cop can talk to them. There was a really interesting episode where a cop was like dissected the episodes, and he was like, this is all the stuff that's illegal that like a cop, if they did it to you, like without you signing a paper to be on the show Cops, would be, you could like take it to court. Yeah. And like, you don't think about that thing when you're like watching a reality show like that, right? No. But it's like, it's also like going back to like talking about like, what Latinx content is. I think that there's like such a the diaspora of what a Latinx show can be is so large, and people don't realize that. They think it's like, oh, like, you know, they make tacos and like they're like talking about like, you know, being a janitor or something like that. It's like all these like very cliched topics or whatever. But like for example, I've got this horror feature that I wrote that's about the lechuza. Have you ever heard that? No. The lechuza is a bruja in South Texas who looks like an owl, right? And they're all like parables to like
don't stay out too late and be slutty, right? It's like come home. My grandma used to tell me all the time, Lechusa's gonna come get you. Put a shirt on, or like pone un suéter. You know but it was like the Lechusa is a character in this feature that I'm doing, where this girl, like, instead of getting her period, turns into the Lechusa. It's kind of like Black Swanee. But when I pitch it to other Latinx people, they're like, oh my God, I've never heard of that. And I'm like, yeah, because it's such a South Texas thing, right? There's the devil of Camaroncito. It's like a devil that hangs out outside of Texas dance halls. Okay. And it looks like somebody that's dancing with you, but when you look down, he's got hooves. Yeah.
That sounds vaguely familiar. But
yeah.
Spooky. But yeah, like these like very common things from
in
where
my culture. Yeah, right. In my diaspora of Latinos in South Texas, right, is not your Chicago experience.
But but as like the Latinx media at large, we're barely scratching the surface on like who we are. And I think queer shows get this a lot too, where they sort of get a backlash from the community for not being representative enough. I don't think VIDA, I haven't really seen anything for VIDA like that. And that's what I like about VIDA. Like, it's not trying to be the Latinx show. It's trying to be it's
trying to be a Latinx show. And I think that we are successful in that.
Yes.
Because it doesn't have to be everybody's cup of tea, right? There's like, think about how like homophobic the Latinx community is. Like, especially like older people. Like, my mom watches it and because she like loves me and she's like watching it, but my like stepdad is like so uncomfortable with all the sex. Like, there's he's never gonna sit down. Like, he'll watch it, it's on TV, that like, bless my mom and dad for getting stars, or my mom and my stepdad. But he's gonna feel so uncomfortable because he's like old Mexican man who's just like, ugh. He was like Bucci, like when he walks out of the room, like, but it's not for him, but it's for like my mom's watching it and she turned my aunts onto it, and it's like, it's maybe we don't have to be. I think the notion that like you don't have to be for everybody, but you have to be for someone, right, is like existent within the Latinx like diaspora of stories as well, not just the mainstream, right?
Yeah, I think VIDA sort of covers this, where it's like even within our community, we can't agree on like, because we're just like regular people, like who live in a community. Just because we share the same neighborhood and skin color doesn't mean we all experience the world the same way, And VIDA has a little bit of this. We're like, oh, well, why do you do this? And blah blah blah, and that's very real conversations we all have. Like, I think the second season they get on Emma for not wanting to define her like sexuality, which is a thing that comes up in the queer community, where they're like,
VIDA blows my mind every day about like queer identity, because that is not my experience, but like I feel like I learn a lot, and there's like stuff to be added, like from like combining a queer identity with a Latinx identity. That's like mind-blowing for me. And there's like, even during that conversation at the table, there was very different like perceptions of it.
Perceptions and like and how one identifies. And that happens on this podcast a lot. People talk about how they didn't feel Mexican enough, Latinx enough, like how they didn't fit in. If in the absence of Latinx people, they had to like fit into either like a black or white conversation. And
I mean, that still happens for me, and I feel like I'm not like having conversations about like art theory in Spanish, but I can get by in a conversation, but like that happens to me where I don't feel Mexican enough or fluent enough, even though like I am, and I have a specific identity within the culture and the language. But there's this pressure to be the most Latinx or like the representative for in any space that you're in where there's not primarily Latinx people. That's why VIDA feels comfortable. It's like, you have no idea how much pressure is lifted off you when everybody like understands. This is like TMI, but like I remember like in another room I was like talking about how like my grandma used to slap me when I was little, and they were like in the face, right? When you talk back, they like slap you in the mouth. I remember like on another show they're like, oh my God, like did you tell somebody? And then like on VIDA people did, my grandma did worse to me, you know what I mean? Like it's just like, not that like domestic abuse is like something I should advocate, but like just the experience of like growing up in that world is something you can talk about kind of freely and openly with other like Latinx writers. That feels good. It feels nice to like not have to explain yourself all the time. Comfortable. Because
there's a shorthand. I don't even know where that comes from, but it is like like a thing that, you know, because there is such thing that are very exclusive to like different regions, different countries.
Yeah.
But some of the stuff is, and I think also we make that up. Like, I think if you like see, you know how you see like the Me Too,
Me Too.
memes, and everyone's like, oh yeah, that's totally us. But I'm like, if you change like two things, I feel like another race would be like, oh yeah, that's totally us. Like,
totally.
Yeah, but you know, that's sort of what I want to do with this podcast is like expand the definition of what it is to be Latinx, because I think we all fall into the things of like, you know, the most, but it's like, who's deciding that? And it's like, and I feel like half the time it's not even us. Like we spend so much time policing each other and how we identify and present our identity without really even asking each other, like, where are you from? What is your journey? Because again, how we present ourselves, you know, is a reaction to our family, how we grew up, how people, like, I was just listening to this podcast where they said there's three types of identity: how you see yourself, how other people see you and impart your identity onto them, and the third is how the identity you choose to like meet
project.
That. Yeah,
it's like your rising sign, your moon sign. That's so funny.
Yeah, but it's true. Like, and I think, you know, I think for a long time the goal for Latinx people was assimilation into the dominant culture.
Yeah.
But of course, that is a very white and male culture, and I think thanks to the internet, we're just starting to like be comfortable in who we are, see our diversity as strength, and think I'm just fine the way I am.
Yeah, and I think when you, now that maybe our language is like more a part, and maybe this is also just in a big city like LA too, like you find that, you know, your food and the way you talk and like little tidbits of your language become like interspersed in other people's, in the dominant culture's language. You finally feel like a part of the equation, you know, maybe not all the time or ever for some people, but for me, I feel like more comfortable if I'm even in a white space. Like if I like let out a couple of like things in Spanish where it doesn't matter if they understand me. That's what VIDA did for me. You know, it blew my mind to see a show that did not subtitle itself, because it doesn't matter. Like you don't lose any part of the story, right? And like explaining to other people that it's not subtitled, they're like, well, how am I going to get it? I'm like, and then they watch it. I'm like, did you miss anything?
Yeah.
And they're like, no. And I'm like, it's pure, you didn't.
It's pure context. Like,
you look it up. Or you really want to know what that word means? Like, look it up. You got the internet. It's on your phone in your pocket. Yeah. So it's like that kind of blew my mind. And I had been going through, before I got VIDA, I had been going through this thing where it's like I wanted to, like, how was I going to write the Spanish in my scripts? And now I just like whatever. Like sometimes I'll write in English, sometimes I'll write in Spanish, sometimes it's both, sometimes I'll subtitle it in the script, sometimes I won't. It depends what the moment is. It was funny because last season I used to read the table reads. I would read the action right during the table reads, and the VIDA scripts are so bilingual, they go back and forth, that there was a line that said no dice, but I said no dice. And everybody started like laughing, and Tanya was like, only on this show, like, would you like mix something up like that in a table read?
That's very
but
true.
That was like what, like a moment that I really like remember from the show, is just like, wow, we're so cross dynamics that it feels comfortable to like switch, like code switch, like go between both, right? Even with each other. I was just talking to somebody, you know, I'm in this play festival, and we were talking about like how people, you know, the Spanglishness of it when it's performed in theater, and how one of the writers who I was talking to didn't like it. He was like, I think it just feels performative. I feel like it doesn't feel authentic. And I was like, I get that feeling too sometimes, but I think it depends on who. You can tell by how it's written. Secondly, you can tell by the actor who's not super comfortable being like interchangeable with English and Spanish. Yeah. But I was like, and then another writer was like, that's how my cousins talk. Like, I love it. I think it's great. I would say if I had a language, it's for sure Spanglish, right? Yeah. And it's like, it's the words. It's so, what's also interesting about working on VIDA is the words, right? The words that use, like, I think I called like a dish towel a trapo. And that's a rag, right? Yeah. But the reason I realized why we call it that is because my grandma used to cut up these old towel, like these rags, right? Yeah. So when she's like dame un trapo, right? It's like, give me a rag. Yeah. But it's like a dish towel. So like my mom would call actual dish towels that she bought from Ross, like a trapo, right? Go get me a trapo. Yeah, that's what I call them. Yeah. So it's like funny because I think those words, like, but then I said trapo in the room and people were like, what? You know, but like it's different from for everybody.
I didn't even know that was the right word.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, just trapo.
Trapo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, just speaking from a household where both languages were used, so you didn't get the exact translation all the time.
It's fun. I think that I have had to reinstate it in my life because there was, when I was growing up, it was so present. Spanglish, growing up around Mexican people in San Antonio, and then maybe this is awful to say, but like actively working away from that to feel like I was projecting intelligence.
Yeah.
Isn't that awful to say, to feel like I had to, like, in order to dominate that white space of UT, like that I had to lose some of my authenticity?
Yeah.
But that's how I felt. And I feel like sometimes even in language, even in relationships, if I was in a relationship with a white guy where I felt like I didn't, where like my vocabulary was not good enough, right? Where I always had to find the word or find the English word that was more intelligent, right?
Yeah.
And not that I was thinking of it in Spanish, but just that there was like a more base level of word I was thinking of. And I've always had this like fear of language in my life. Like, am I sounding smart enough? Right? Or am I sounding Spanish enough, or speaking a Spanish, or speaking too much Spanish or too little Spanish? I remember a writing professor I had in high school. I think I was on this kick of like, I have to write big words to sound smart. And like, it wasn't sounding like anything. It was just sounding like I looked up a bunch of words in a dictionary, right? Thesaurus. And I remember she told me, she was like, Lindsey, she was like, everybody knows you're smart. Like, you don't have to like put it on paper. She was like, just write what you're thinking. Yeah. And that was a mind-blowing moment for me. Miss Thompson, if you're out there, shout out. Thank you, white lady, for showing me how to be a writer.
Shout out to her, for real.
Shout out Miss Thompson.
Yeah.
But that sticks with me, and maybe she would feel like shocked to hear that, but like that simple thing of like, just write how you think, I take it with me every time I like sit down in front of the computer.
Yeah.
Because
all that you were feeling is just a reaction to like a culture that's telling you it's not okay to be this way, and to be different, or to be Latinx, or speak this language. And then but then even when you get the sense of yourself and how you're going to write and stuff, it still brushes against like the structure that's like, oh, like why are you only writing Latinx stories? Oh, why is your script written this way? It's like there's a lot of work still to be done.
I think I'm still gathering up the balls to tell people that like I want to only write Latinx like character when it's my thing. Yeah. I only want to write Latina characters and Latino characters and people who like are like my friends and family, you know? And I think that's okay when it's your thing that you're developing. Like I always want to insert a Latina lead in the thing that I'm writing, because that's my voice and it's going to feel like me. And, obviously you have to like kind of adhere to the show that you're writing on in order to write like them. But when I'm doing my own stuff, it's always going to be Latinas at the front of it.
And you're sort of speaking to like the kind of characters you write. Is there a story you're always trying to tell? Are there similar themes? Is there I'm
always trying to tell angry teenage girl story. Okay, cool. Like, it's always like teenagers always come out in my scripts, but it's not because like I want to tell young adult stories. Like for a while, it was like my reps were only sending me out on like teenager things. I was like, I don't only want to work on teenager things. It just like so happens like those are like the most work I did, or the most uncertain and complex I ever felt in my life, was maybe when I was a teenager and I was trying to like figure that out. Yeah. In early 20s too. Like I feel like I write my best characters are just like messy, late teens, early 20s characters, because it's like that's when I didn't know who I was either. You know? And I'm still learning. And I still like it. Don't get me wrong. I love a fucking Riverdale. I watch Riverdale into the ground. But I find myself like writing these kind of like dark, messed up stories that are because and they always have daddy issues. They're always dealing with messed up dads. That's me.
So I want to sort of like, I know that sounds corny, but like what's the advice you would give to like other writers who are maybe don't have like you, honestly, that are like, oh, I'm not secure in calling myself a writer. Like I don't, I feel like I have imposter syndrome. Like,
just keep doing it. Like that's like, even if you like wake up and you're like, I can't do this today, or like this is bad, or like just sit your ass down and do it. Like, and keep doing it. Like that's the only thing that people who are making more money and have more experience and have more chances than you do, is that they just keep doing it. And there's like when you can pull something out of your back pocket, like don't just have one sample. Like pull, like, oh, you want something like this, I have this, and you want something like this, I have this, and it's all you. It doesn't have to be like fit the format of whatever they're doing, but like just don't stop. Like so much of being an artist is just sheer ambition and the desire to keep going. And sometimes you're gonna have days where you don't want to do anything and you have to like stay in bed and like ruminate. And I think sometimes like I need to like take break. I need to force myself to take more breaks as like a writer and a human in general, because I'm kind of like Energizer Bunny in that way, where I just like if I'm not doing anything right now, like I need to like move. I need to do something. Yeah. So it's really hard for me to relax, but I think that that's part of it when you're starting out. And also not just like stopping at any roadblock. Like I think when I was trying to get my first job after, because I was like lucky for Mad Men, I was on it for 2 seasons, so it was like pretty good. And then I was like, oh shit, I gotta find another job after this. Then I think I sent out like 100 emails of just like everybody I had ever met, of just like, you got a job, what are you doing, how's it going, like, and just, it's not only just networking, but like just asking for the thing, because you can kind of like pussyfoot around the what the ask is, but then just ask, and don't be afraid to ask, because like what's the worst that's gonna happen? Like somebody says no. You know what I mean? And then somebody says no, you're just like, okay, cool, like you suck, bye. But like but then the next person might say yes. And I've gotten rejected from festivals and from jobs and people and relationships and like everything, and it's just like, if I just stopped going, then what would that be doing for myself,
And I do want to ask about like relationship with other writers, like either
you don't want to ask, or you do want to ask?
I do.
You do.
Just in the sense of like, networking, building relationships, that like you just mentioned, the weird, like, because I was talking to this to another guest about like, friends, and then like favors, and then like networking opportunities, and it's something that I'm trying, like everybody every guest on the podcast is constantly saying, like, reach out to people, network, like talk to everybody. And I just had a guest yesterday was saying like, sometimes they can be very professional relationships, and I think it's something you have to learn as a professional. But can you speak to your experience of just like having relationships with other writers, and
any type of writing relationship that I have? If you're gonna make something good, it cannot be just a professional relationship. You got to get like messy with that person and be like real and honest. Like I would say that's why VIDA works, is because we're all like up in each other's business and shit, like knowing what's going on. Like you need to talk to that person. Like, and it's fun to be on a staff like that, where you can feel it feels family oriented, But like even in another scenario, like the showrunner on The Purge, my friend James, I love the story, is like we were both assistants at Mad Men, right? We were sitting next to each other working on this hard job at like 10 o'clock at night, like putting out like the prep schedules and all the production stuff that comes with working in a production. And we were in that ringer together, and then like we just kept in touch, and then he got his own show, and then that didn't go, and then we started developing this detective block thing, and then just through sheer force of us like knowing the same people, we got on the show together, and now he's running it. And now like we've known each other so long and so honest with each other, and like he's not a Latinx guy, he's a white guy, but like he makes space for me to tell the story that I want, and I make space to hear him. And he's such a good structural writer. Like he teaches me so much in like writing structure, because mine is all mood and talk. And sometimes he's like, you gotta tone it down. Like there's no structure to this act. But like we worked really good together too. But that's only after years of like getting to like know each other. You know what I mean? It's like, I think for me, it would be hard to just be like thrown with somebody I didn't know and make something that I really liked. You can make it work, and I think in a room, because you have to get to know each other. And sometimes in like rooms, you're doing so much emotional work, like in the room with each other, like you're sharing so much emotional stuff. Like there's this other writer on The Purge who she was doing like a lot of emotional work for herself, and she was like saying some stuff in the room, and I was like, oh my god, this is triggering me. But like you have to like let that come in, because it's part of the process of getting something good out, because you're talking, especially on dramas, it's all emotion, and like how do you bring your emotional experience into those stories, like other than infusing what has happened to you. Right.
Yeah, that makes sense, because I have heard this about writers' room where it's like, oh, we share everything, like, you know, it's like things get tense or things get like real, and you know, like I'm kind of a private person, so I'm just like, okay, but now the way how you explain it, it's like, well, writing is like sort of telling the truth of you are, and if you're in a room, you have to do that as a group in order for that to like
that's
go to
like
the writing.
a nightmare for some people.
Yeah,
but like you have to, I think the professional part that you're talking about comes in, and knowing that that's what you're doing, right? And not like, oh, I hate that person because they said that thing and they're thinking this about me. That's like a space that is not like you're at work and you're doing the thing and you're trying to tell a story. It's confusing because it's wrapped up in emotion. So the professional part is like knowing that like, oh, I'm using that for the story, and we're arguing because we both are passionate about this story, not because we don't like each other, but because we want to tell the story in a way that feels authentic to us. So that's a weird thing, a really weird thing about writing in a room with people. It's cool. For me, I love it. I love that weird, messy human, like interpersonal dynamic that, like, where else are you going to get that? You know, like when I'm with my family, I'm just like, stop talking to me. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to talk about that. So, but when you're in a room with people, you have to.
See, I learned something every episode, you know? Yeah, that's good to know. I never thought about it that way. Okay. I'm feeling better. I'm such a scaredy cat. That's the thing. Like, you know.
It's okay though. I mean, we want your scaredy catness. I'm scared too, dude. It's like it's not easy. And
you know, you mentioned, you know, you're in the Writers Guild.
I just got in.
Yeah, you just got in. So can you talk about, you know, your process, like the process to doing that, and also like how, you know, because this is like something that's like oh, like the goal, and like what is it once you're like in it?
Girl, I just got my health care card yesterday in the mail. I was like, these people don't have to pay for what? I was like, I'm gonna go book every appointment in my life right now. I'm gonna get my teeth fixed. I'm gonna get some glasses. It was so crazy. I got it in the mail yesterday. I was like, I get it. It's all for the health care and the pension. But no, I mean, the process of being in the Writers Guild is like, you just it's just weird. It's like a money thing. Like you have to like qualify for a certain amount on a show or something, and then you're in. It's like a point-based system too. So like when I did that script on the Facebook show, I was an associate member, which means I just like got the perks of like going to meetings and like, you know, seeing free movies. But now when you're a current member, then you like that I just became, I'm can get healthcare and benefits and stuff, which is lighting up my life right now. I feel like it's such a mark of like, I know I see whenever like people like get in, they like post the card and stuff like that. It's just like a little badge of honor of like, hey, I'm a official, like, and in some space that's protecting me as a writer, which writing is such an amorphous like life, right? Like when you're not protected by like something that's like a stamp of approval, right? It's like I was like, I guess I was a writer when I was like in 5th grade writing poetry in my bedroom to like 9 Inch Nail songs, you know.
Because that is something that, you know, people reach out to me and they're like, oh, well, you know, I don't have any credits or blah blah blah,
but you're still a writer.
And I tell them like the requirement for this podcast is you identify as a Latinx writer. Like, that is all. And I think for some people it's the stamp of approval. The WGA is like, I am official. Like, but you know, like the way you're saying, it's like I have health benefits. Like, the insurance card is more important than like.
For me, I'm like, girl, just keep giving me those benefits, and I'm good. I'll write whatever you want me to write. Again, it's like looking back into like life of little Lindsey, like it's like hard to like think like when I allowed myself to be creative, even though I was creative like since I was a kid. It's just like you live in a world where like your parents are struggling to pay the bills, or your dad walks out on your mom, and like it's just like what's important is not expressing yourself, it's providing. And I had that mentality for a long time, and now, you know, I'm in my mid-30s and it's just me. Like people are like, you know, you're living that life. I'm like, yeah, it's just me. You know, so it's like that's again a privilege that I wear, of like being able to, you know, just wake up every day and concentrate on being a creative person.
So this is a portion of the episode where
we dance.
We're dancing. We've been dancing the whole time.
That's true. We've been just like walking around dancing.
I'm very out of breath. This is a portion of the episode where you shout out, you know, writers that, you know, you admire. These could be like, you know, superstars or people you've been looking up to your whole life. It could be writers you work with. It could be writers you don't even know, but you see their work and you're like, let me tell the people about them.
Yeah.
So this is just so the audience at home can learn about them. So maybe I could interview them. Who are the people that are like lighting up your life?
Everybody that works on VIDA. Like, it sounds corny, but like I gotta say, you gotta Tanya, just from her place, I think she's writing now and developing. My friends Gladys Rodriguez and Jen Gomez Castillo and Esti Giordani, like they're all writing on this show with me, and like I'm astounded by their words every day. You know, even some of our support staff, Raul Romero, he is really, really good. He's not Latinx. He's a tall Spanish man. But some of the things that he's writing is like very, very, very interesting too, because it's from a queer perspective. He lives in WeHo with his beautiful husband. You should meet him, although he's not Latinx, but he's got a Spanish perspective. And then, I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think, like the writing that inspired me from being a kid was Cisneros, like just reading her poetry, reading Women Hollering and like stuff like that, and knowing that like I could write in a messy way like that was very female. That was inspiring. I mean, fucking Andalzua, right? That book is like life changing.
Yeah.
There's so many like shout out to like the baby boomer Latina writers of my youth who like were paving the way, you know? So, I mean, that is like really like who inspired me originally, right? But right now it's like the people that I'm working with right now trying to tell stories, like, and there's writers who I would say I've gotten something from every writing mentor I've had along the way. From Rael Tucker, who was on True Blood, like she just taught me like structure and just like getting down to the story. And Carlton Cuse taught me that like you could write anywhere. Don't be precious about your writing. Like he would write on a plane, he would write in the car, he would write wherever. Like, and he just got it out. Like it was a job, it was work, because it's his job, right? That writer from Mad Men, the beautiful the scripts. Matt Weiner scripts of Mad Men, those are like some of the cleanest, most beautiful scripts I've ever seen in my whole life. And I have a whole, like, don't tell anybody, I have a whole big book of them in my house, but like I go back to them all the time, and just like for just simplicity of story, because it's like it's literally like Don walks into a room and then like beautiful dialogue, but it's like I would say I'd taken something from every experience. And that is another piece of advice that I would give to people who want to write or people who want to come up, is like don't take any experience as like disposable, right? You're gonna get, whether it's bad or good, you're gonna get something from everywhere you go, like either what to do or what not to do. And hopefully it's more what to do, because you're going to learn a little tidbit, even if you disagree with something that somebody's working with you is doing, like you're going to get a little tidbit from everybody. And maybe that's another piece of advice, is like sometimes when someone's seeking out like a mentor or advice, it feels very prescriptive. Like, don't seek people out because you want something from them. Seek people out because you like them and you want to, and they add something to your life, right? Like the best writing relationships or working relationships are with people who I just want to like chill and drink with,
Yeah.
you know, because you're going to make better stuff with those types of people than people you feel like you have to like impress or suck up to, you know what I mean? And VIDA is like that too, is like, I don't walk into work every day like I have to impress these people, although I do feel like I have to impress them. But I walk into work like every day like, oh cool, I get to talk to my friends. Yeah,
That's cool.
it's nice.
So this is our final segment.
Okay.
I like to have my guests title the episode.
Oh God.
So don't worry, there's a prompt.
Okay.
So it's like a fill in the blank. The prompt is a blank Latinx writer.
You know, this is like stealing a little bit from, I'm part of like a group right now. It's like a pod of Latina writers who are all developing, and we called ourselves Untitled LatinX Project, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like I feel like we're all in development. So if I was anything, I would be a working title, like a Latina or Latinx working title. Okay. You know what I mean? Or like in progress, because I'm not finished, you know, and I'm just getting started. And even I think sometimes people are like, oh, you made it, you're good. Sometimes you do like the contests, and I feel like sometimes I was on all these really great shows, these great cable shows, and I would get to the end, like I was in the last 6 or I was in the last round of like the contest, and I wouldn't make it, and the consolation statement would be like, well, you're good, you're gonna make it, you're almost there, you know. So it's like, for me, it's like I'm always almost gonna be there. I'm never gonna be quite there. I'm like always gonna be a working title, because I'm always pushing to like figure out what I can do more, you know. I want to do an all Tejana project one time, like a Tejana in every crucial role, like DP, AD, writer, director. I want an all Tejana project.
Yeah.
And I think it's possible. If you're a Tejana, get at me.
Yeah. Oh, and this is really my last question. Where can people find you? What is your social media like?
I am on Twitter. It's my name, Lindsey, 2 underscores and then Villarreal at the end. And then I'm also on Facebook and on Twitter.